The U.S. Coast Guard brings unique authorities and unmatched capabilities as the world's leader in maritime counter-drug operations.
3:47 a.m. Caribbean Sea, 112 nautical miles off the coast of Curacao. The water was black. No moon, no stars visible through the heavy cloud cover that had rolled in from the south. The only sound was the low thrum of diesel engines pushing through still water. The MV Esperanza Celeste was a Panamax tanker, 800 feet of rusted steel carrying approximately 400,000 barrels of crude oil. On paper, the vessel was transporting Venezuelan heavy crude to a refinery in Malaysia. The shipping manifest listed the cargo as legally exported under humanitarian exemptions. But the manifest was a lie, and the men aboard the U.S. Coast Guard cutter Steadfast knew it. At 3:52 a.m., 3 rigid-hull inflatable boats carrying DEA maritime enforcement specialists and Coast Guard tactical teams launched from the Steadfast stern. They moved without running lights. Communication was restricted to encrypted hand signals. The Esperanza Celeste had no idea they were coming. Boarding took 11 minutes. The crew, mostly Indonesian and Filipino nationals who had been paid triple their normal wages to ask no questions, offered no resistance. They were detained on the forward deck while federal agents descended into the ship's belly. What they found was not crude oil. The first 2 cargo holds contained legitimate petroleum, but the third hold, the one that wasn't listed on any manifest, held 47 steel containers welded to false bulkheads. Inside, vacuum-sealed bricks of cocaine totaling 6.3 metric tons. Street value, approximately $240 million. But the cocaine wasn't the discovery that changed everything. In a locked compartment behind the ship's communications array, agents recovered 3 encrypted satellite phones, a laptop with military-grade encryption, and a leather briefcase containing bearer bonds worth $18 million. The laptop would take FBI cyber forensics teams 6 weeks to crack. When they did, they found something that made the cocaine look like a parking ticket. The file was labeled Operación Horizonte Negro, Operation Black Horizon, and it detailed a decade-long scheme to siphon Venezuelan state oil assets through a network of phantom companies, bribed port officials, corrupted shipping registries, and, most disturbingly, a shadow financing structure that reached into the highest levels of the Maduro government. The operation was not run by a cartel in the traditional sense. It was run by a state. But it operated exactly like a cartel. And at its center was a man federal investigators would come to call the architect, General Ernesto Calderon Vega. Fictional, of course, but based on patterns investigators had seen before. A military commander turned petroleum minister turned invisible kingpin. A man who had transformed Venezuela's collapsing oil infrastructure into a personal money printing machine, and had done so while his country's citizens starved. According to the seized files, Calderon had diverted an estimated 50 million barrels of crude oil over 8 years. Not stolen in the conventional sense. Diverted. Routed through shell companies. Sold on gray markets. The proceeds laundered through a web so complex it touched 31 countries. And at least 6 tanker ships carrying his cargo had been tracked entering waters within range of U.S. territorial jurisdiction. The Esperanza Celeste was the 6th seizure, but it was the first to yield the digital keys to the entire operation. Federal prosecutors now had a map. A financial DNA strand that connected every transaction, every bribe, every falsified document. And they intended to use it. 2:15 p.m. FBI Field Office, Miami, Florida. 17 days after the Esperanza Celeste boarding, the room was windowless. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. 12 analysts sat at workstations arranged in a semicircle around a central display showing a network diagram that looked less like a criminal conspiracy and more like the nervous system of some malevolent organism. Special Agent Diana Reyes stood at the front, a laser pointer in her hand. "What you're looking at," she said, "is the most sophisticated state-sponsored money laundering operation we have ever documented. And I want to be very clear about what I mean by that." She clicked to the next slide. A cascade of corporate logos appeared. Shipping companies, agricultural exporters, a chain of hotels in the Dominican Republic, a green energy startup in Texas. These are not cartel front companies in the traditional sense. These are legitimate businesses that have been systematically infiltrated, acquired, or created specifically to move money generated by illegal oil sales, narcotics trafficking, and she paused human smuggling operations. The room was silent. "We've traced financial flows from the Calderon network to bank accounts in Panama, the Cayman Islands, Singapore, Dubai, and Liechtenstein. The total value moved through these channels over the past 8 years exceeds $4.7 billion. Someone in the back of the room exhaled audibly. "But here's what makes this different from a cartel operation," Reyes continued. "Calderon isn't just laundering money. He's using the profits to purchase influence. We've identified payments to port officials in Houston, Galveston, and New Orleans. We've identified payments to customs brokers in Long Beach. We've identified payments to at least 7 individuals currently employed by U.S. Customs and Border Protection. She let that land. This is not corruption in the traditional sense. This is systematic infiltration of American infrastructure by a foreign criminal enterprise operating under the protection of a sovereign government. The network diagram pulsed on the screen behind her. Red lines connecting nodes. Each node a company, a person, a bank account, and at the center, a single name, Calderon. Our objective, Reyes said, is to collapse this network, seize every asset, arrest every domestic collaborator, and send a message that American ports are not for sale. She clicked off the laser pointer. We begin in 72 hours. The operation was designated Gulf Thunder. It would become the largest coordinated federal action targeting foreign oil-based money laundering in American history. The scale was staggering. Over 900 federal agents from the FBI, DEA, ICE, and Department of Homeland Security. 47 simultaneous raid locations across 6 states. Naval assets from the U.S. Coast Guard and U.S. Navy positioned in the Gulf of Mexico and Caribbean to intercept any vessels attempting to flee. And for the first time in a non-military operation, the Department of Defense authorized the deployment of surveillance drones to provide real-time intelligence on ship movements throughout the Gulf. This was not a raid. This was a siege. 4 a.m. Houston, Texas. Day 1 of Operation Gulf Thunder. The city was asleep. The port, however, never sleeps. Along the Houston Ship Channel, the largest petrochemical complex in the United States stretched for 50 miles. A forest of refinery towers, storage tanks, and cargo cranes silhouetted against an orange-tinged sky. At Pier 47, a tanker called the MV Caribbean Fortune sat low in the water, its holds full of what manifests claimed was Mexican heavy crude bound for a refinery in Louisiana. FBI and Coast Guard teams moved in at 4:03 a.m. Within minutes, they had secured the vessel and detained its crew of 22. The cargo was legitimate, but the ship's safe was not. Inside, agents found detailed records of 14 previous voyages, all carrying diverted Venezuelan oil sold through shell companies linked to the Calderon network. The captain, a Venezuelan national named Tomas Guerrero, broke within hours of interrogation. He provided names, routes, and most importantly, the identity of his primary contact in the United States. A customs broker named Martin Delgado operating out of Galveston. By 6:15 a.m., Delgado was in federal custody. By 8 a.m., his computers had been seized. And by noon, FBI cyber analysts had used his email archives to identify 6 additional domestic collaborators, including a deputy port director in New Orleans and a logistics coordinator for a major American shipping company. The dominoes were falling, but Houston was only the beginning. At 4:12 a.m., DEA and IC teams hit a warehouse complex in Channelview, Texas, that had been identified as a distribution hub for both money and narcotics. The building looked unremarkable from the outside: corrugated metal walls, a faded sign advertising industrial equipment sales. But thermal imaging had revealed activity patterns inconsistent with legitimate business operations. Vehicles arriving at 2 a.m. departing before dawn. Never the same trucks twice. Agents breached through 3 entry points simultaneously. Flashbang grenades. Doors torn from hinges. Shouts in English and Spanish. Inside, they found 12 men, most of them Venezuelan nationals on expired tourist visas, packaging cocaine for distribution. The seizure totals were significant: 1.4 metric tons of cocaine, 300 kilograms of methamphetamine, and approximately $40 million in cash, bundled and shrink-wrapped, stacked on pallets like merchandise. But the most valuable discovery was in a back office. A series of ledgers, handwritten, old school, deliberately kept offline, documented payments to American officials. Names, dates, amounts, services rendered. One entry read, Galveston inspection delay, $15,000. October 2023. Another, manifest amendment, Houston Port Authority, $22,000. February 2024. A third, patrol schedule advance notice, CBP Sector 7, $8,000 monthly. This was not random bribery. This was a payroll. And the Calderon network had been running it for years. The raids continued through the morning. In New Orleans, FBI agents arrested the deputy port director identified in Delgado's emails. He was taken from his home at 5:30 a.m., still in his bathrobe, as his wife screamed at agents from the doorway. In Galveston, a second customs broker was detained along with 3 associates who had facilitated the entry of at least 20 shipments of diverted Venezuelan crude over the previous 4 years. In Tampa, a shipping company executive was arrested at his office. His company had provided logistics support for the Calderon network, routing tankers through international waters to avoid inspection and falsifying cargo documentation. In Mobile, Alabama, a storage facility was raided and found to contain not oil, but weapons. 214 assault rifles, 40,000 rounds of ammunition, and components for improvised explosive devices that investigators believed were destined for narco-trafficking organizations in Central America. The Calderon network, it turned out, was not just moving oil and cocaine. It was arming the cartels that controlled the drug trade across the Western Hemisphere. By 6 p.m. on day 1, Operation Gulf Thunder had produced the following results: 34 arrests across 6 states. 19 of those arrested were American citizens, including 7 current or former government employees. Seizure of approximately 6.8 metric tons of cocaine and 400 kilograms of methamphetamine. Seizure of cash totaling approximately $67 million. Seizure of 4 vessels carrying illegally diverted petroleum products. And the freezing of bank accounts in 3 countries containing an estimated $240 million in laundered funds. But investigators knew this was only the visible portion of the network, the part they could touch, the part that operated on American soil. The heart of the operation was still beating, and it was beating in Caracas. The challenge facing federal prosecutors was jurisdictional. General Calderon was a Venezuelan government official. He operated from Caracas, protected by the Maduro regime. There was no extradition treaty, no diplomatic leverage, no legal mechanism to bring him to American justice. But there were other tools. Over the following weeks, the Treasury Department's Office of Foreign Assets Control designated Calderon and 37 associates as specially designated narcotics traffickers. Their assets in any institution touching the American financial system were frozen. Any business dealing with them became subject to secondary sanctions. The State Department revoked visas for dozens of Venezuelan officials connected to the network. Travel bans were imposed. Financial pressure mounted. And then came the tankers. In the 6 weeks following Operation Gulf Thunder, U.S. naval forces and allied nations intercepted and seized 4 additional vessels carrying diverted Venezuelan oil. 2 were captured in international waters near Aruba. 1 was detained by Colombian authorities acting on American intelligence. The 4th was seized by the Dutch Navy operating under a joint enforcement agreement. Total petroleum seized, approximately 2 million barrels. Street value at current markets, over $160 million. The Calderon network was hemorrhaging, but the most significant development came not from law enforcement, but from inside Venezuela itself. 3 months after Operation Gulf Thunder, a mid-level official in the Venezuelan Petroleum Ministry defected to Colombia. He brought with him a hard drive containing internal communications, financial records, and operational plans spanning 5 years. The documents confirmed everything federal investigators had suspected and revealed depths of corruption they had not imagined. General Calderon had not merely diverted oil for personal profit. He had constructed a parallel petroleum system operating entirely outside official channels. Ghost refineries, phantom tankers, fake manifests approved by officials he had placed throughout the government. The defector estimated that Calderon personally controlled assets worth over $3 billion, making him one of the wealthiest criminals in the Western Hemisphere. And he had done it all while Venezuela's economy collapsed, its people fled, and its legitimate oil industry crumbled. This was not theft. This was economic warfare conducted by a man against his own nation. The human cost of the Calderon network extended far beyond stolen oil and laundered money. Investigators documented connections between his organization and human smuggling operations moving migrants from Venezuela through Central America and into the United States. The routes were established. The corrupt officials were the same. In one case, a migrant smuggling convoy intercepted near the Texas border was found to be traveling in trucks owned by a logistics company linked to Calderon's Shell Corporation network. The migrants, 47 individuals including 11 children, had each paid between $8,000 and $15,000 for passage. The money flowed upward through the same channels as the drug profits and the oil revenue. It all fed the same beast. And the beast was insatiable. Today, General Ernesto Calderon Vega remains in Venezuela, protected by a government that has made him untouchable within its borders. But he cannot travel. He cannot access international banking systems. He cannot move money through any institution connected to the global financial network without triggering immediate seizure. His tankers are hunted. His associates are imprisoned. His network is fractured. And federal prosecutors have made clear, should he ever set foot in a jurisdiction that honors American warrants, he will face charges carrying a minimum sentence of life imprisonment. The story of Operation Gulf Thunder is not finished. Networks this large do not die, they adapt. They restructure. They find new routes, new fronts, new officials to corrupt. But what this operation demonstrated is that even state-sponsored criminal enterprises are not invincible. That even when a corrupt government provides protection, the reach of international law enforcement can still inflict devastating damage. The 50 million barrels of oil that Calderon diverted over 8 years represented the lifeblood of a nation. Money that should have built schools and hospitals. Money that should have fed children and employed workers. Money that instead lined the pockets of a criminal wearing a general's uniform. And now, finally, that criminal is feeling consequences. Power does not always announce itself with violence. Sometimes it operates through spreadsheets and shipping manifests, through bribed officials and falsified documents, through shell companies and offshore accounts. The Calderon network understood this. They built an empire not on bullets but on paper, not on intimidation but on corruption. And for years, it worked. But the fundamental truth about criminal enterprises, whether they call themselves cartels or governments, is that they depend on systems, on predictability, on the assumption that the networks they have built will continue to function. Operation Gulf Thunder demonstrated what happens when those assumptions fail, when the tankers are seized, when the accounts are frozen, when the collaborators are arrested and the ledgers are exposed. The network does not simply weaken, it collapses. If you have watched this far, consider what this story reveals about the nature of modern organized crime. It is no longer sufficient to patrol borders and arrest drug mules. The threats we face today are sophisticated, state-backed, and globally distributed. They exploit the complexity of international commerce. They hide in the spaces between jurisdictions, and they require an equally sophisticated response. Operation Gulf Thunder was that response. 900 agents, 6 states, multiple nations, naval assets and cyber forensics and financial investigation all working in concert. This is what it takes to fight organized crime in the 21st century. And this is what it will take to continue fighting it. The oil that flows through the Gulf of Mexico powers American industry. It heats American homes. It fuels American vehicles. It cannot be allowed to become a vehicle for transnational crime. The ports that line the Gulf Coast are the arteries of American commerce. They connect our economy to the world. They cannot be allowed to become entry points for corruption. And the officials who guard those ports, who inspect those ships, who verify those manifests, must be protected from the temptation that criminal enterprises will always offer. Because when they fall, we all fall. This story is fictional. The names, the operations, the specific details, all dramatized for storytelling purposes. But the patterns are real. The threats are real. The vulnerability of global systems to sophisticated criminal exploitation is real. And the need for vigilance is constant. If this story resonated with you, share it. Talk about it. Ask questions about how we protect the systems we depend on from those who would corrupt them. Because the next Calderon is already out there, building networks, bribing officials, moving money through channels designed to be invisible. And the only thing standing between that criminal and success is our collective refusal to look away. The tankers still sail the Gulf. The refineries still process crude. The ports still hum with activity. But now, somewhere in a federal building, analysts are watching, tracking, waiting. And when the next network emerges, they will be ready. Operation Gulf Thunder was not the end. It was the beginning of a new kind of enforcement. One that follows the money across borders. One that treats criminal organizations as the sophisticated enterprises they have become. One that refuses to accept that any criminal is beyond reach. The oil vault in Caracas is emptier today than it was a year ago. And that is not an accident. That is justice.